Good afternoon, everybody. This is Purple Update live coming to you from the Purple Couches of Despair. I am your host, Joe Johnson, owner of purplePTSD.com and VikingsTerritory.com and PurpleTerritoryRadio.com. Gonna be a little different of a show today for you. I really want to hear what your guys' thoughts are on the game last night. RN, if you're here today, I wanted to continue the conversation we had last night in regards to just the nightmare that was the game last night. Who's culpable? Thoughts on what it means for the postseason, so on and so on. So I want to start there because I try not to be overly negative, or at least when I'm being negative, I try to be genuine and not clickbaity or doing it solely for effect, unless I'm like joking or something. But I also don't want to be optimistic for the same reason, for the sake of optimism. I'm not calling anyone out by name, but I did see a lot of tweets last night from people that I respect, essentially saying, you'll wake up in the morning as Vikings fans and realize that, the game didn't really matter. I want to start there and address that idea because that game mattered on so many different levels. It may not have mattered in retrospect after next week, assuming the Packers beat the Lions. It may not have mattered for seeding purposes, or at least for winning the NFC North. The Vikings still could have won both games and ended up in a different seed, depending on what happens with the NFC West, so on and so forth. But let's just assume the seeding would have remained the same and the Vikings would have ended up with the 6th seed. The idea that game otherwise doesn't matter is ludicrous, and I think people know that. So I don't need to explain it too in depth because I don't want to sound like I'm being condescending or explaining football to people who, if you're watching the show, you're a fairly big fan of football to be this far down the rabbit hole. But you guys know the narratives about both Zimmer-led teams and about Cousins with Monday Night Football. You know how poorly that Week 2 Packers game was, and how it must resonate inside of Cousins' psyche because, they were, by all intents and purposes, coming back, and Cousins threw a god-awful pick and sealed the Vikings' fate there. I thought this game carried tremendous symbolic weight. I said that a lot building up to the game, and they could not have come out any more flat. It was almost historically bad how the offense performed. Let me read a quick statistic to you. And, I have a question from Charles Smith. Is Dalvin Cook going to be cleared to play against the Bears? I don't think so. Medically cleared, maybe, but will the team clear him? No, he's not going to play. I would bet everything I own on it, because that game no longer matters. That kind of goes against what I'm saying here, but the Vikings can't change their seeding at this point. They're the 6th seed, so why would you result of that when Thielen came back too early? I'm wearing my new Thielen jersey. I'm so worked up, I forgot to tell you guys. So if you couldn't tell yesterday, I was a little off my game. My brain wasn't working the way that it typically does, especially during the halftime and post-game show. I was extremely, extremely nervous, and that was because I proposed to my girlfriend last night after the game. I felt like it was just the perfect opportunity. She has been a Packers fan her whole life. This is going to sound very specific and very stupid, but I think it's a microcosm of our entire relationship. We were watching the game with my parents. My parents' dogs were being crazy. It was just very overwhelming, I think, or it would have been for ex-girlfriends of mine to be around my parents and the dogs and the rah-rah of the football stuff, and seeing her fully committed to being a Vikings fan. She has a media guide. She reads it to learn more about each player. She's just really dove in headfirst into the Vikings world after hating the Vikings her entire life. And she does that because she loves me, and it meant a tremendous amount to me that she did that, because she understands how important football is to me, how important it is for our future, so on and so forth. So you know, the fact that the Vikings played like horse shit and she didn't say, you know what, I'm going back to the Packers, or didn't make me feel worse about it. I was like, you know what, this night exemplifies our future on multiple levels. I have to propose. I was going to propose on the field, actually, during the Bears game. But now I'm not doing that. So I'm getting married. Wah! Anyway, yeah, no, there's no reason to play Cook, so why would you bring him back? I think Thielen, again, is a representation of that. He came back too early. There's a lot of self-reporting and hamstrings, and from what I've heard, it was more on him. Staff clearly isn't 100% still. And I don't think Dalvin Cook is going to be for the playoffs either. I don't think it matters, though, to be completely honest with you. And that's kind of tying it into what I was saying, because this coach staff is just, it outthinks itself every single time there's a big game. Every time. Going back to the only time that hasn't happened that I can think of in a huge game was the Seahawks game where Blair Walsh missed the field goal. That game was perfect. The game plan was good. The defense played well. Other than that, it's been crazy town. You guys know what I'm going to say. They get too cute. That has to be like a movement. Like, we have to start that hashtag. Please. I'll start it today. They need to understand that the fact, as a team or as fans, I would much rather lose doing what we do well and saying that team just was better than us. I don't feel that way about that game last night. I just feel like we had a terrible game plan that we could not deviate from. And it's not even like the better team won. It was just ugly football. I mean, I'm writing an article right now about what we learned last night, and it's that neither team, the Vikings or the Packers, are contenders. Rodgers looks bad. Their defense looked great, but the Vikings, what were they doing? What were they doing? If you have Booger McFarland, the worst Monday Night Football color man ever, and I'm throwing Dennis Miller into that running, say, hey, maybe try a screen during the fourth quarter. What are you doing? I get Dalvin Cook is out, but why would you let that injury impact the entire offense to the point that it's like he's haunting the team? Let's not run any of the stuff that we typically run because Dalvin's not here. So it affects everything. It's just maddening. But let me get back to what my point was, which was the Vikings statistically, oh my God. So they had 139 total yards of offense. That's 2.6 yards play. That's the third worst offensive output of any team in the NFL this season. They had 7 first downs, 8 punts, and they only crossed midfield on their own once. And they also had those turnovers deep in Packer territory, and they were handed this game. They did nothing with it. And I just keep going back to the same thing, and I have to think it's Stefanski, because I just can't imagine Kubiak with this roster would make these decisions if he had the power to. Somebody asked me last night who I would hire as a head coach, and I said Kubiak for a couple reasons. Familiarity with the team, amazing track record of success, more as a coordinator than a head coach, but you don't want to start over with an entire new coach. That usually takes a season or two to ramp up to peak what they want to do. Granted, that hasn't really been the case the last couple seasons with some of these younger coaches, but I think Kubiak can step in, keep George Edwards as the defensive coordinator, and just do what needs to be done. Just run the same plays that you ran against the Eagles, the Raiders, the Lions the first time. You know, it's insane to me that against the Chiefs, against the Seahawks, and now against the Packers, they deviate from what works for them. And I get why people say Cousins doesn't show up in big games. And historically, that may have been the case. But this season, it's almost like they're scheming to do on purpose against teams with winning records or during primetime games. They seem to want to, I mean, you have 3rd and short at the Packers like 4-5. You run a double end around with Diggs throwing a pass to Cousins, which doesn't work. And then you do a double moves play that's all or nothing downfield field to Adam Thielen, who's not 100%. It's insane. I mean, honestly, it's so embarrassing. So sick of seeing these commentators say these super embarrassing things to this team. It's gone back seasons now, where they'll say things that are just like, if you have Booger McFarland saying that about screens or just the play calling in general, you have major problems with your offensive coordinator. I've heard announcers say more critical things of this Vikings coaching staff than I've ever heard in my life. And maybe that's like the new thing that announcers are doing. They're being more critical. I know Spielman's brother tends to want players to play perfectly. That play last night where Curse broke up the pass and it was kind of borderline pass interference, and they were looking at it and he did get his head around. Like, he was essentially asking Curse to defy the law of physics or biology and turn his head around and make an interception while he's running full speed and covering this guy. Stuff like that I get is irritating, but to hear that guy who is mocked on a weekly basis for his takes say what he said about this offensive game plan, he was right about it. You don't need to, just because you don't have Cook, you don't need to roll out an entirely new offense. Beyond that, you have that late touchdown. This is a great example of what else was wrong with this game. That late touchdown to BC Johnson that was called back because Reef had to hold in order to give Cousins time for the double pump fake. Why was Reef at that point in that game still one-on-one against Zadarius Smith? He was getting completely owned. The Vikings coming into this game ran the least amount of 11 personnel packages in the league. Why not run heavy formations and put a tight end over there and just chip him the entire time? You can't tell me that a team like the Chiefs that was missing 2 offensive linemen that did that exact same thing and negated not just one Darius Smith, but 2, because at the time, Everson Griffin and Danielle Hunter had the number 1 and the number 2 amount of QB pressures in the league. They had a backup quarterback playing, and meanwhile, Zadarius Smith is essentially making a career for himself in the backfield, disrupting not only Cousins' timing or sacking him, but breaking up run plays. He was everywhere. It was like a Khalil Mackian type of game, and they did nothing to change that up. They didn't change up their tempo. I mean, at least in the Broncos game when they came out with the horrible game plan, they said, all right, let's do some up-tempo stuff. Let's keep, their defense on the field, tire them out. We didn't change our game plan at all. And then to get Thielen involved, they do that run. It was just garbage. Garbage. I have zero faith in this team doing anything in the playoffs. They have to win 3 big games against 3 winning opponents on the road in primetime. There's no way. I would not be surprised if the Vikings offense came out and did a human pyramid and then threw it 50 yards backwards. It's insane to me, the decisions that they're making. And they're not learning from them. I mean, I had faith that they had learned from them. I didn't know what I was basing that on. But I am so tired of not even being able to say, well, I don't even know if Cousins, how he does against good teams, because he's completely out of his element. Whenever we play a good team, it's not like they're stopping him at what he's doing best. They're stopping him at things that he's done time and time again poorly at. He's not a shotgun quarterback. Stop making him one. Let him roll out, do bootlegs, do something different, or at least put a tight end or a fullback over there to stop the guy. Oh, God. Yeah, RN says Kirk is a statue in the pocket, no pocket awareness. It's not solely on his shoulders. Yeah, he shoulders some of the blame, but it's we knew that about him when we signed him. Everybody knew that. If I knew that, the team knew that. So what do? They knew they weren't going to have their 2 guards. They finally make a splash in free agency. They get Reef and Remmers. They move Remmers to guard, despite the fact that he is limited to no experience playing that. They draft Brian O'Neill, who turned out to be good, but they didn't do much to bolster the interior of the offensive line. Wasted an entire year. This year, they brought in Bradbury. They moved Elflein. They brought in Klein for free agency, so on and so forth. But the reason that all these national guys scratch their head as to why Cousins is so successful rolling out to his left and throwing it to his right is because he doesn't have to worry about the fact that he knows he doesn't have pocket awareness. So when you roll him out to the left, he's able to see the blind side defensive end in front of him or to his right. And so he's not constantly thinking, I can get hit, I can get hit, I can get hit. Whether he's thinking that consciously or subconsciously, it affects what he does. And so I know that's an issue, and that means that he's not an elite quarterback and never will be. I've said that the entire time. But we've seen how you can win with this guy, because outside of that, he can make every throw on the field. You just have to use him the way that you have to set him up for success, and I feel like they're not doing that in any of these big games. And that's on the coaching staff. Every quarterback has a glaring weakness. Some don't really, but most quarterbacks have things that they're better at or worse at, and they keep doing things that they know he's not good at. It's almost as if they do these things that he succeeds at, and therefore they think that, oh, well, we can run any sort of play because he's playing at this MVP level. He was playing at an MVP level earlier this season. His stats were identical to Mahomes' stats. That's not an accident. I'm losing my voice. I'm sorry. He can put up elite numbers in this offense with the skill players around him. You just have to know how identify what he's good at, what he's not, and avoid doing what he's not good at. And they keep doing the latter in these big games, and I don't understand why. I really don't. I'm writing an article right now, and I mean it in a theoretical way, but if you were to tell me that these coaches or Stefanski, let's say, was abducted by aliens, and they said, this is the worst take ever, I know that. The setup is so bad. And they said, if you don't lose these big games, we're going to blow up Minnesota. And so he's doing it on purpose. I would not be surprised. Maybe about the aliens, but do you know what I mean? I would not be surprised if he was losing these games on purpose. Because they're going away from what has been successful each time. It's maddening. It's insanity. I feel bad. I skip doing shows sometimes because I feel like I'm so repetitive. I mean, we have to get that hashtag going. The don't get too cute. Because that's really what it comes down to. I mean, the defense did all it could last night. It was on the field the entire time. I don't know. I'm going to read... Arden says, I actually want the guy to win. I know that, dude. I know you're a fan. I know you're not shitting on the team for the sake of shitting on the team. I hope you guys understand that I'm not doing that either. We all do the same thing. We want a Super Bowl. Every component you need. Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl, okay? And I'm not a Dilfer, but you can win. Jackson is getting better and better at it, but he's not a pocket passer. He's a run-pass option guy. That's a great example. So when they break teams, do they just have him put it up in the pocket? It's insane. So I mean, Thielen's banged up. He did not look good. Cook, who knows where he'll be for the start of the playoffs. But it doesn't matter because this team, time and time again, does this. And I have no faith that they... And maybe the offense figures it out, but then we'll be, playing the Saints in the NFC Championship, and Zimmer will dial up some next-level defense that no one's ever heard of, and Harrison Smith will literally just walk off the field shrugging his shoulders. It's earlier this year, I wrote an article that I'm going to post in the article for this show, and it was basically like me coming out as the charter member of Society, and I was saying there's 3 things that can go wrong in any game, especially any big game for this team. Weird coaching decisions, Cousins regressing, and the secondary screwing up. And I feel like I had 2 of those last night, but I don't know. Oh, the people are debating like the great defenses and quarterbacks. Yeah, the 2015 Broncos defense was dope. It was up there with, a lot of people talk about the 85 Bears, but I used to argue that the 2000 Ravens were better than the 85 Bears for a couple reasons. Um, I know it was 2000, but the league was completely different. It's always hard to compare eras. Um, but there was more high-flying, deep ball stuff. The Vikings were a game away from playing that Ravens defense. That would have been fun to see, even though they got, shut out against the Giants, and the Giants got smoked by the Ravens, so they would have lost, and it would have been the fifth loss for this Vikings franchise in the Super Bowl, which would be a record. That 2000 Ravens defense was insanely good. I mean, I think they allowed 8 points a game, which in 2000 was still a lot. I mean, the Vikings had an amazing offense. You had coming out that were starting their run. Like the Colts, for example. It was the transition into the NFL we have now. We weren't quite here yet because it took the Patriots shutting down the Colts for a couple years before Irsay, the owner of the Colts, complained to the NFL rule committee, and then they changed the rules to make it defensive backs to stop wide receivers. But man, the 2015 Broncos defense was amazing. I always thought this Vikings defense had the potential, but they're never going to get there. Clearly, I mean, Zimmer has gotten everything that he's wanted. He's gotten all the money he's wanted. He's gotten all the draft picks he's wanted, and they were historically good on third down, but they wilt under pressure. Zimmer gets outclassed by offensive-minded head coaches in big games. Outside of what I was just saying about Stefanski, things. I think that'll be the legacy of this era, is just a gigantic missed opportunity yet again. I genuinely think that if I were the Wilfs and the Vikings were one and done, which they will be in this postseason, that they should, and they won't, but they should move on. I mean, Zimmer's contract is up next year. What is he going to do differently next year? Draft another corner? I really think they need a change in philosophy, and I think that needs to be Kubiak. I think they need an offensive-minded head coach. I think that's where the league is going, and I'm not a huge trend follower, but while he's offensive-minded, he's old school. You can keep George Edwards or somebody. I mean, you have so much talent on this roster. It's a joke that they're playing the way that they played that way last night, this late in the season. Get rid of Zimmer, bring in Kubiak, keep Edwards. That's what I'm saying. You guys might think I'm overreacting, but I don't think you could react to that game last night. It was god-awful. Getting a lot of shit on Bleacher Report, but Rodgers did not play well. I mean, that throw to Devontae Adams, the overthrow to Williams, he's behind guys. I mean, that exception. Teams are contenders. It was an ugly half of football. 3 turnovers, almost 4. Ran into a guy with the Packers jacket today, and he was see the score. The whole Happy Gilmore on the green. I saw it come back, but did it go in? I need help burying that, guys. By the way, if anyone has a pickup truck, but I essentially said, gloat all you want. Your team's not going anywhere. The margin of error is going to be very, very slim in this NFC playoffs. And the sad thing about it is I say game in a different way, though, did about the game, or the Seahawks game, rather. And that's that didn't win this game. The Vikings. And it really, because I'm looking at the postseason and what we're going to do. Because essentially there's 2 weeks of football left. So unless the coaches came out and said something very drastic, like we did get too cute, we get it, we need to go back to what we're good at. But I don't think they're learning from this at all. I don't know. I will be honest though, I love doing this show with you guys. This is the highlight of my day, outside of hanging out with like fiance, which is kind of weird to say. Um, I love talking through this stuff with you, and it's not as fun, I don't think, for people who are watching it after we do it live, because there's a lot of back and forth with what you guys are saying. But if you're watching, I mean, you know, we get over 1,000 views every time we do one of these shows. So hopefully those people watching will start to join us live. There's a lot of people that watch live that don't ask questions. I hope you guys don't feel intimidated. Join the party, man. It's a pity party, but it's a party. And I'll do better at making sure that I do the show at the same time every day. I think if I go at 2, that helps people. I don't know, you got 2 better. 2 might be better because I work at the liquor store 3 days a week, and that I go in at 4. And so doing 2 would give me time to get some articles up beforehand and so on and so forth. But, the Uno reverse card. Tang, man, you're the best. Oh. Has it been the whole time? Just now? Oh, it's... Alright, I'll just see you guys. Cats is probably chewing on... Thanks for showing up. Your wide dream cutout. And check out the sites for some articles. Hopefully we can get the message board going so we can share all hours of the day. Purple Update Live from the Purple Couches. See you guys later.